Welcome to Publisher Group Talks. I'm Lauren, and our studio guest today is Justin Fox. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Justin is a travel writer, novelist, photographer, and he's here to share some gems of information with us and help to inspire, educate, and inform us as our show is about. And for those who are new to the show that are listening, this channel is about creating a digital mentorship program where we want you to be educated, informed, and inspired. And also for younger listeners out there, I say matriculants and those who are just finishing school, it's also actually a great place for you to listen to about careers and career guidance and getting an idea of what is actually possible and how to go about it. Something that you want to do, you can even have your parents listen to it and you can say, this is what I think I want to be when I'm big. And that's what we're hoping to do, is to create that platform for you. So just to introduce Justin and to give the audience a bit of a background about him, he's a travel writer, novelist, he's a photographer, and he's based in Cape Town. Justin currently works for Getaway Magazine. He's the editor. He was a Rhodes Scholar and he received a doctorate in English literature from the Oxford University, after which he did a lot of teaching for 20 years at University of Cape Town. Justin has written 17 books. He's also written scripts, directed award-winning documentaries. He's 2 times Mondi Journalism Award winner in 1999 and 2004. And if you head off to Exclusive Books or one of your more known publishers, you could say Amanzi, there's Tafelberg, you'll find titles under his name, which will be Forever Who Fears the Sea and The Impossible Five. He's also written children's books, and his current book is My Great Expedition. So if you Google him, you'll just find tons of information on Justin, and he's definitely an inspiration. I mean, with 17 books behind your name, that's, I really, that's amazing, because it's a lot of work. You know,
it is.
It's a lot of work.
It's all the free time I've had in the last 17 years is sort of to try and, so it's weekends and evenings, because I've held down a day job much of that time. So you have to have a real passion for words and for writing, or just drive, because it's most of this kind of writing is about discipline. It's not about the talent. And talent's 5%. 95% is the grit, because of the discipline and sitting down and writing. A 400 page book is going to be thousands of hours in front of a computer, which is dull. It's dreary. It's hard.
It is hard.
There's not much glamour there.
No.
It's pain.
Yeah, and when you win those awards, they almost feel as though that they're an acknowledgement of that suffering that you went through to write those stories. Like you're saying, sitting behind the computer, writing it, turning it around for years and years and years, that you get that acknowledgement for the effort you put in, for that beautiful product that you put out.
Yeah, I suppose that's the one acknowledgement. The prizes are less important than having readers enjoy your books. So any kind of response, even if it's just a nod that, I read your book, it's all right. Even that is important for a writer, because it's such an isolated profession. Yes,
you feel alone with your thoughts that are on a piece of paper.
And it's such a long time before you get even a little bit of acknowledgement, because you might spend a year, 2, 3 years writing a book, then it goes through the whole production phase, so that's 6 months with a publisher. So by the time the first person reads the first word, you've been going at this thing for years.
And you're over it.
You're long over it,
Your ego's so far past it, you're like, that.
But it's still important to have people read, and to have that acknowledgement.
It is. I think in any profession, I agree with you. And can I talk a little bit about your children's book that you wrote?
Yeah, sure.
For you, did you find that was quite an exciting project, a creative outlet? Like it almost feels like a piece of art.
It was a really fun digression from the hard slog of the big books to do something small and fun and light and creative and quick. Not that 2-3 year hard slog with all the research. A children's book is a light and playful space.
It's fun.
And I used a poem that I'd written and adapted it into a children's book. So it was already something that I had. And that was a creative outlet, and it was something quite different that I hadn't done before. and I enjoyed it tremendously, largely because there wasn't so much hard slog. Yeah.
I just want to ask you some questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Just to go back, in the previous episode that we recorded, we spoke a lot about writing and getting that article that the journalists would be covering about Table Mountain or the gardens, or, you know, in that genre, and they were writing for either the blog or they were writing for the magazine, etc. How do you get ideas and inspiration for things if you're stuck in an office and you're asked to cover something? You don't get a lot of field time out to go to that place, and the idea is that, well, you know, you live in Cape Town, you've driven past there a million times, you've probably been to the mountain a million times, and your boss doesn't think it's relevant for you to go up another trip up Table Mountain.
Yes.
How do you actually capture that information properly?
Look, I suppose if you're writing about, say, something like Table Mountain that's been written about 1,000 times before, you're always trying to find an interesting, new, different angle. And that's boots on the ground. That's going and spending time walking the mountain. So the research, whatever form it takes, is very important. And in a case like that, I'd say time on the mountain is part of the research. The other thing is to bring yourself into it, so that it is your personal reaction to the mountain or to the subject. So feelings and emotions and what it does to you becomes important. And then also using what other people have written about the mountain and said about the mountain. That could trigger stuff in you, but also using quotes from what people have said. You know, this mountain's been written about for 500 years, very eloquently and very beautifully in many different languages. It would be interesting to go and find out what's been written, what the first French people wrote about when they arrived in Table Bay in the 18th century, or whatever. There are always going to be different myths and legends that, and then you can take from those myths and legends about, say, Table Mountain, of which there are many, and adapt them to your story and weave them in. So it's curiosity, and it's your own interests and your own take on the subject, and how you respond to it. I think that's very important, and that's always going to be original because it's you. It's your interface with the thing.
It's about your personal journey and how you're expressing that journey.
Yeah. Well, you've got to be careful that there's not too much me, I. So you've got to strike that balance, and that comes with experience, knowing when to back off with my personal experience.
Yeah, keep it objective.
Yeah.
Less subjectivity involved.
And often in good travel writing, you weave, it's braiding. You've got many different strands that you're working with. You're working with your own response and your own personal take on the thing. Then you're looking at the facts. Table Mountain is sandstone, and it's got this kind of fynbos and these kind of animals on it. So there's your flora, your fauna, your facts, which you're going to get from your Wikipedias, etc. And then there's the historical stuff. And those historical accounts get woven in. And then there are people that you interview. You're up on the mountain, you find other hikers, and you ask them, why is this mountain important to you? So it's your voice, other voices, the facts, and then the historical narratives. And you braid them, and you weave them in and out. And you move from one to the other in an interesting way, so that it doesn't become big blocks of text. It becomes a tapestry, should we say.
Do you think one can really make a career off of writing?
Depends what kind of writing. If it's journalism, yes. If it's book writing, no. In South Africa, the book writing space is so small, and South African readers are small and diminishing as a group, that it's almost impossible to live off writing books. There are probably only a handful of South African writers, and they tend to be writing very popular fiction, the Wilbur Smiths and the Dion Mayers and so on. Everyone else, the jobbing writers like myself, we've got no chance of earning from a book. To give you some idea of the numbers, an average South African, English-speaking South African produced book will sell between 1,500 and 2,000 copies at best.
Yeah, that's nothing.
And an author gets between 3.5% and 5% of the cover price. So you just need to do the mathematics on that.
I think the illustrator on the children's book gets more than what the author does.
Sometimes the person who's done the cover gets more than the author.
So get into cover design.
So to give you an example of a book that goes into exclusive books, if my book goes into exclusive books will get 45% of cover price, and I will get 3.5%.
That's insane.
And I will have spent 2 years writing, and they will spend 2 minutes selling it across the counter and stocking it, of course. And that's the industry. So you can't rile against that. That's what it is. So make book writing your hobby, and make other forms of writing, copywriting, journalism, your day job. And that's what I've done for 20 years, is I've made the writing of the books and the poetry and the short stories and the coffee table books something I do in my spare time, and the day job is the journalism.
And that also makes you better at your job, and vice versa, because that's your passion. So you're going home and you're writing and you're exploring, and then you're doing it for work, and it's kind of molding itself like that.
I think for any journalist that's also playing in those other spaces, novel writing or short stories or children's books or whatever, it's always going to help your journalistic writing. They feed off each other, and you learn from, and they improve both forms of writing. And the more genres you're playing in, I think the better and the more creative and the more exciting.
It's quite a tragedy, actually. I mean, I didn't realize it was the percentages were that far removed from each other.
It would be, for most writers, it would be more profitable to be doing just about anything, street sweeping, toilet cleaning, whatever, than writing.
It's insane.
If you're in the book space, yes.
It's insane. I mean, having said that, you still have the writers who are like, I want to get my work published and I want to go through the channels. What advice would you have for them going through a publisher? Because now we can also self-publish too. Pros and cons, advice on that?
Okay. Look, the first prize is to go with an established publisher. Of course, they've got the distribution networks. They could get you to a foreign publisher. They can get you into all the bookshops. So that is the first prize. To get there is hard. And there are many hoops to jump through. I think the one thing for a young writer to do is to start trying to publish small, in little magazines and so on, creative writing of many forms. And there are lots of little magazines. UCT has New Contrast magazine. There's New Coin magazine in Joburg. There's Stanzas magazine in Cape Town, which does poetry, etc. And there are quite a few outlets, and to get yourself published for free, obviously, there's no payment happening here, but to show a publisher that you have a track record of having been published, that's step one, and that's your training ground, is getting yourself out there in that form, and then you've got your manuscript, your novel you've written, or your book of short stories, and then you start taking it to publishers. In South Africa, we don't really use agents. If you're trying to publish abroad, you have to go through an agent. If I'm trying to publish in London, no London publisher would look at my manuscript. It would have to come through an agent. So you first have to get an agent, and that is extremely difficult. Fortunately, in South Africa, you can go straight to the publisher. You send your manuscript, or the first 3 chapters, they're often like that, with a little synopsis of what it's about. And try your luck. There's some publishers that tend to be more amenable to young, undiscovered writers, like Kwela, for instance, which is part of the Naspers group. But yeah, I would send the manuscript, in whatever form it is, to all the publishers. Don't wait for a rejection, because that could take 3 to 6 months, and then you start the cycle again. So
self-publishing?
Yeah.
Is that a little bit like blogging?
It's a bit like blogging, but it's more sophisticated, more and more sophisticated. It is plan B, and it is a chance to get out there, and there are people that have got lucky with it. It just flies on Amazon. It's rare, because you don't have the distribution networks and all the publicity and stuff, and the book launches and so on that go with a publishing house. A lot of that money that they eat up, they're using it to put you into the right channels, get you into the proper book reviewing circles and so on. Having said that, people have made, even South African writers have made the self-publishing thing work. So I would say it is a viable plan B rather than an outlandish plan B.
Yeah, because you those are your options, and sometimes as a young writer you look at that, or even experienced writer, and you think, well, maybe that'll be the easier option.
Yes.
Obviously there is a large outlay of cash.
There is, although if you do self-publishing, you can cut some of those corners if you do most of it yourself, and if you've got a basic understanding of InDesign and so on, you can put together something quite elegant yourself, or with a friend.
You're still going to pay for printing, though. You're
still going to pay for printing, but then you could just put it out online.
Yeah.
As an ebook, and a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, that's true.
The other thing that I should mention is that apart from trying, when you're cutting your teeth, apart from trying to get published in little magazines, literary magazines or the like, is to do courses, and there are many courses. UCT runs some Get Smarter type courses. You could go to university and do a creative writing course, and many undergrad courses, certainly at the universities I've taught at, have undergrad creative writing courses, and then a master's in creative writing, which is a much bigger and longer course, and those are good. And I think most of the top South African universities have those courses. Then there are the more informal writers' workshops and so on, where people get together once every 2 weeks over a glass of wine, a bit like a book club.
Yes, a writers' club.
They read each other's work, and I've belonged to two of them in the last couple of years. One for poetry and one for novel writing, and they're extremely useful. It's you're in a warm environment with people that care about you and your writing, and you care about them and their writing. So it isn't that aggressive kind of critical space where you get flayed alive, which could happen with the press, with a reviewer. You're with people that help you nurture, and you might write a chapter one week, and then the next week you look at someone else's chapter, and it's a chance to workshop and talk through things like character development, plot, style, tense, persona, voice, all those really important things for a long form of narrative writing. You can work through it in a workshop situation. So and it's free, whereas a creative writing master's course is going to set you back 50,000 rand or whatever. This is a few friends and a glass of wine.
And they're probably easy enough to find, like the Book Guild, etc.
Lots of Facebook groups as well. You can just go hunting.
Absolutely. Resource portal, resources that you find to be quite good. Doesn't have to be in a specific genre, but just generally that that are kind of go-to research places.
Look, I mean, Wikipedia is great. I use it a lot. Lonely Planet travel guides, great. National Geographic. I'm speaking for travel. For me.
Yes.
National Geographic, Lonely Planet, and then specifically when I'm writing, just a basic dictionary and a thesaurus is useful, and not just the online one, not just what Word is giving you. Have a real dictionary, like a South African Oxford dictionary.
Do they have different words in them?
They have completely different words in them. For instance, the South African Oxford English Dictionary is fantastic. And don't use the thesaurus in your Microsoft Word. Have a real proper thesaurus. It will give you much more interesting
They've
stuff.
got other words in them.
They've got other words. Better words. And then for travel writing, particularly if you're writing about Africa, is to have a lot of the sort of resource books. Like if you... A good bird book like a Roberts bird book, a good animal book like Smithers, a good tree book like Palgrave's, a good book on insects, a good book on geology, a good book on a few good pocket history books on South African history. Because as a travel writer, as I said earlier, you're a magpie. So you're taking little bits of information from all sorts of sources. So you need many different good resources around you, and easy at hand, because if you have to go looking for stuff, you often don't. So if I'm writing on a big desk, I'll have all those books kind of piled around me.
You become a library.
Bit of a library, yeah. And as you can hear, I'm using books a lot. I use the online sources as much as I'm using good old paper sources, because a lot of the stuff I'm looking for, particularly if it's historical and so on, isn't online. It's in books.
Yes, hasn't yet been
digitized. No. In fact, if I'm writing something historical, 90% of the stuff I'm getting has not been digitized. So I'm getting it from libraries and books.
I think it's also really good for the audience to hear that you're saying that 90% of the information you're gathering is actually not online.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Do you think that the market is saturated? That there's
in what respect?
In travel writing?
Not at all. Not at all. Travel writing went through a golden age in the 1980s and 90s with a lot of the great international travel writers like Bill Bryson and Paul Theroux and Bruce Chatwin and a whole. There was a huge flowering, and it has, as a genre, it sort of died away a little bit. So, and certainly in Africa, there's very few really good travel writers writing about Africa. Very few.
So there's actually a lot of blue water sitting there for someone to come in who has potential.
Amount. The only problem is that there's not a lot of appetite for with readers for reading. Certainly in Africa, there are not a lot of readers for African travel writing, and that's the main problem. Yeah.
How do you think it's possible? Sorry.
No, so that's where the journalism comes in. There's still a huge appetite for good travel journalism about Africa because people's attention spans are narrowing shorter and shorter. So the short travel piece in a magazine or online does very well.
Yes.
But you bring out a 300-page travel book with a lot of really good in-depth travel writing, and that doesn't sell anymore. Not very well.
I don't think there's a way to revive that again in some way. Do you think it's maybe just how it's being marketed, or?
I don't know. I think I don't know. Books are in trouble, I think. Certainly in South Africa. In Africa, books are in trouble. Not a lot of young people are prepared to go and spend 250 rand and buy a book. It is a shrinking market. They're expecting it online, and I'm sure that everything will just eventually be online, and everyone will be reading ebooks as paper dies. So the book is going to continue in many different shapes and forms, but it will mostly be online in the future. One would assume.
What's the best piece of advice you've given a young writer who's given you their article to read, who's been fairly proud of it, and it's not that good, and you wanted to kind of motivate them but not let them down? How would you go about encouraging them?
The first thing I do is I go through it very carefully and I pick out the stuff I like. You start by showing the things that are working, and that's very important. That creates confidence. And then you slowly unpick all the things that don't work. And with young writers, the things that don't work are very often too many adjectives, too many adverbs, too many cliches, too many stereotypes, too much me, naivety, and as I said before, the fact that they haven't done the hard yards and the research. So I would say go make the changes that I've suggested here, then go away and do a whole lot of reading and research. Then rewrite the story, and then let's have a look again once you've done the hard yards and once you've been through a few drafts. The first draft is invariably a fairly rough piece. I'll go through many different drafts for even quite short articles, 5, 6, 7 drafts easily. And as I said before, time. To not do one draft after another. Do a draft, leave it for a bit. Do it again, leave it for a bit. And of course, have other people read it, not just your editor or you. The more people that read it, the more comments come, and that's always useful.
Just put it out there, basically.
Yeah.
Or at least let your friends read it, or people that
you
are
respect
close,
in particular. Yeah, people whose opinion you respect. Yeah.
That's good advice. Random question. Do you have like a funky dance that you ever do sometimes when you're super happy?
I do.
Do you?
I do.
That's so cool. Did you make it up? Is it the sequenced?
There are quite a number of different dances.
Okay, there's a few.
Yeah, there are a few. And the outfits that go with it too.
I love outfits. Tell me about them.
No.
Oh, damn it.
Secret outfits.
Secret outfits.
Yeah.
The audience are like, oh, he does a heavy dance. He's got secret outfits. He listens to trance. This guy's super cool. Okay. Yeah, and if... have you ever been stopped by someone saying, Justin, can you sign my book?
Yeah, it does happen. It does happen. It's generally my mother, but it does happen.
You know, put it out there to the audience, and they're going to come and find you and ask you
hunt me down.
hunt you down.
Yeah.
Because I think you're a great mentor and someone to look up to, and you definitely, I think you're super cool.
Oh, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, awesome.
You too.
Thank you. If I was going to be in writing and I came to work at Getaway, I'd just be like, can you be my mentor, please?
Or dancing, if you wanted to dance as well.
Some salsa. I used to do salsa.
Yeah, me too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. I didn't have too many outfits, though. I've never been a big dresser upper and stuff. But
we can change that.
Can we? Awesome. High five. Guys, follow Justin and connect with us, share the show, tell all your friends about it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, if you're watching. Cheers.
Thank you, Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.